Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came from the House to the Senate in 1994. So I've been here, hanging around here for, 22, 23 years. And I always remember, because my House district was in primarily just a metropolitan area, it's primarily Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so I got in my little plane and I started going out west. And I remember the first trip was to Shattuck, Oklahoma. I don't think there's anyone in this room who's ever been to Shattuck, Oklahoma, or ever heard of Shattuck, Oklahoma. But that was when I had my rude awakening of the reality of what really is important. We're a farm state. We're a rural state in Oklahoma. And in Shattuck, I can remember a guy, and John, he had tears in his eyes, and he was talking about how his farm has been in their family for so many generations and all that, but they're going to lose it. They're going to lose it because of the death tax, inheritance tax. Since that time, that's been over 20 years, I cannot go into any of our rural areas and have a meeting without that rising as the number one issue. I mean, over and above everything else. It always does. It surfaces. And I think we know the arguments there that it's an immoral tax. We've already paid money on that and all that. So, I'd kind of like to get an idea of what you think about that. What would be the effect that the president now has in his budget to eliminate that tax? What would be the results of that, do you think?
I think particularly for family businesses and large family businesses, it would be significant. I think there's an underappreciation for how much of the American economy, how much employment is based in family-controlled businesses. We just put out a study based on the 2704 regs that Treasury proposed back in August to highlight the contribution of family-controlled businesses. It's significant. Yeah. And the reality is that if the business is large enough, they have to go and buy back a certain portion of that business from the federal government every generation that it survives. Public companies don't have to do that. And what that means is that their planning for succession is just a continuous process. Some of our members, they've got hundreds of family members who are shareholders in these companies, and they're just continuously planning for succession. And what that means is that they're draining off revenue from the company, not to go buy boats or do something like that. They're certainly not hiring or building the business. They're doing it just to pay the tax that they know is going to come due the next generation.
Any other thoughts on that? That's really a significant thing, and anymore, that's the only question I get when I'm in rural areas in terms of tax policy. Yep. Well, another one I keep hearing, and fortunately I don't mean this offensive to anyone, but I'm glad that Obama is gone and the war on fossil fuels is officially over, I hope. So when people are talking about the various deductions that are out there as maybe a way to pay for some of this stuff, I like to bring up the intangible drilling costs and the expensing of that. I've heard the arguments, and you folks probably have some thoughts on this too, that it really is not going to have any positive effect in accomplishing, if you're doing it for the purpose of offsetting some of the other deductions by doing away with that, until you're against a rate of 20% or less. And of course, the chances of that happening are very remote. Any thoughts on that particular thing? That's the number one concern, the deduction of the intangible drilling costs for the oil and gas industry.
Sure. I appreciate that that's a priority for the industry. I can't speak directly to that. I can say that sort of one of the positive aspects of this discussion right now is that we seem to be moving towards faster cost recovery, not slower cost recovery, which would suggest that they would preserve that and maybe even enhance it. One of my complaints with the camp draft that came out several years ago, we worked with them extensively, was that after all the work that they put into it, at the end of the day, the cost of capital under their plan was higher. That is, the cost of investing in the United States was higher than it was under the existing code. So they did all that work to reform the tax code, and they made it more expensive to invest in the United States. In my mind, that's the bottom line measure. I mean, either we make it so that companies and investors want to invest here and want to create jobs here, or we've failed. And, eliminating or making it more difficult to recover your costs is not going to move in the right direction.
It's a good argument. Ms. Nellen, you were talking a little bit about the complicated system that we have, and I've always thought of that as being discriminatory against small businesses. They can't afford to have the resources to handle the complicated system, and consequently, they don't do a lot of the expanding and normal things that they would be doing. Has anyone ever put together a study to determine just what we're losing with this overly complicated system that is, in my opinion, discriminatory against small business?
There probably have been studies, and certainly the data that was mentioned here about the number of hours spent on complying. The National Taxpayer Advocate talks about that if they put that into an industry, it'd be like the 6th largest industry in the country so far as the compliance. So it'd be one way to quantify what's lost on that. I think also the time they're spending, AICPA has been a longtime advocate of simplification, and sometimes people might wonder, well, isn't that against your interests?
Because you guys that are CPAs, you make it simpler, then they don't need you as much.
Well, but I think that we would use our resources to help them grow their business. So I think it's looking at what they're losing in compliance as well as what they're losing by not being able to spend that money on someone that can help them to grow and make their business more effective.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Inhofe. I doubt the CPAs are worried that we're going to put them out of business.
No, I'll tell you what surprises me. I know a lot of CPAs. I have not met one CPA that doesn't want it simplified.
That's right.
I always kid them, and I say, you don't really want that. Why do we need you?
Well, there's also risk of complexity too, risk of getting the wrong answer for a client
Good
and all
point.
that.
Senator Heitkamp.
Thank you.